Serial killers have haunted history, leaving behind terrifying legacies of fear, mystery, and horror. Some operated in the shadows for years, evading capture, while others lived among us, hiding behind masks of normalcy. Today, we're counting down the top 5 most infamous serial killers in the United States, criminals whose twisted minds and violent acts continue to haunt us. Number 5. Ted Bundy, the charming monster. Ted Bundy is one of the most infamous serial killers of all time, not just because of the sheer number of his victims, but because of the way he killed. He didn't fit the stereotype of a murderer. Bundy was handsome, charismatic, and well-spoken. But beneath the charm, he was a cold-blooded predator. Between 1974 and 1978, Bundy abducted, assaulted, and murdered at least 30 young women across multiple states. He often posed as an injured man, wearing a fake cast or struggling with heavy objects to lure his victims into helping him. Once they were within reach, he struck. Bundy's killing spree could have ended sooner, but he managed to escape custody twice. First, he jumped out of a courthouse window in Colorado. Then, after being recaptured, he broke out of jail and fled to Florida, where he committed some of his most brutal murders. His final victims were sorority sisters at Florida State University. In 1989, after years of trials and manipulations, Bundy was executed in the electric chair. Even in his final moments, he showed no real remorse, making him one of the most chilling killers in history. Number 4. Jeffrey Dahmer, the Milwaukee Cannibal. Jeffrey Dahmer's crimes were some of the most horrifying in modern history. Between 1978 and 1991, he preyed on young men, luring them into his home with promises of friendship, money, or photographs. What happened next was pure horror. Dahmer didn't just kill, he experimented on his victims, committing acts of necrophilia, dismemberment, and even cannibalism. One of the most disturbing aspects of Dahmer's case is how close he came to being caught multiple times. In 1991, one of his victims, a 14-year-old boy, managed to escape. But when police found him, Dahmer convinced them that the boy was his intoxicated boyfriend, and they left him in Dahmer's custody. That mistake cost the boy his life. Eventually, in July 1991, another victim escaped and led police back to Dahmer's apartment, where they uncovered a house of horrors. Body parts stored in the fridge, skulls displayed like trophies, and gruesome evidence of his cannibalistic rituals. Dahmer was sentenced to life in prison, but was killed by another inmate in 1994. His case remains one of the most terrifying examples of how a seemingly quiet man could hide the darkest secrets imaginable. Number 3. John Wayne Gacy, the Killer Clown. John Wayne Gacy was a respected businessman, a community leader, and even performed as a clown at children's parties. But behind this mask of normalcy, he was a ruthless predator. Between 1972 and 1978, Gacy murdered at least 33 young men and boys, most of whom he lured to his home in Illinois. Gacy would often pretend to be a police officer or offer his victims work opportunities. Once they were inside his home, he would trick them into putting on handcuffs, claiming it was part of a magic trick. But there was no trick, only torture and death. He buried the majority of his victims in the crawl space under his house, which eventually led to his downfall. Investigators grew suspicious after multiple young men connected to Gacy disappeared. When police searched his home, they uncovered the grisly truth. Gacy was convicted and executed in 1994, leaving behind one of the most disturbing crime scenes in history. To this day, his case is a reminder that the most terrifying monsters often wear masks of normalcy. Number 2. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. Richard Ramirez, also known as the Night Stalker, was one of the most sadistic and terrifying serial killers in American history. Unlike most killers who follow a pattern, Ramirez had no clear victim profile. He targeted men, women, and even children in a series of home invasions throughout California between 1984 and 1985. His attacks were brutal. He used guns, knives, hammers, and even electrical cords to torture his victims before killing them. He also left behind disturbing satanic symbols at crime scenes, further fueling his dark reputation. What makes Ramirez stand out is how he was finally caught. In 1985, after his face was plastered across newspapers, a group of citizens in East Los Angeles recognized him and chased him down the street. They held him until police arrived. At his trial, Ramirez showed no remorse, famously flashing a pentagram on his palm and declaring, "Hail Satan." He was convicted of 13 murders and sentenced to death, but he died in prison in 2013. Number 1. Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer. At number 1 is the most prolific serial killer in U.S. history, Gary Ridgway, also known as the Green River Killer. Over 2 decades, Ridgway killed at least 49 women, but the actual number may be closer to 80. He preyed on vulnerable women, especially runaways and sex workers, dumping their bodies in wooded areas near the Green River in Washington state. Despite being questioned in the 1980s, Ridgway remained free for years. His ability to blend in as an ordinary truck painter made him nearly invisible to authorities. It wasn't until 2001, when DNA advancements finally linked him to several victims, that he was arrested. To avoid the death penalty, Ridgway confessed to dozens of murders, making him one of the deadliest serial killers in history. He is currently serving life in prison, but his case remains chilling proof that some of the worst killers can walk among us unnoticed for decades. These serial killers left a dark stain on history, their crimes forever haunting us. But while their stories may disturb us, they also serve as a chilling reminder. Evil can hide in plain sight. If you found this video fascinating, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more true crime content.